Hi guys! I think that there is nothing more satisfying than a garden filled with plants that you can really use. But today, so much of our knowledge and understanding of these plants is being lost. So in this episode, I'm giving you a quick 101 on how to get started with a herb garden, what to grow and what you can use them for. Today I'm starting two types of herbs. I have some perennials, which are herbs like sage and thyme and oregano. Perennial meaning that they will come back year after year, or they will stay as evergreens in your borders depending on your planting zone. So these are the ones that you want to decide where to plant first, as they are what is going to give your garden shape and structure and character. And then I also have the annual herbs like parsley and coriander and basil, which can go in between the perennial herbs. Interestingly, some of the herbs like parsley and coriander are very good at reseeding themselves. And so they can almost appear like they're perennial, but actually it's a new plant growing from the seed that it dropped at the end of the last growing season. For starting herbs, most of them do really well being started indoors on moist soil and just kept on a sunny windowsill. But with some, you might want to direct sow. So some of your reseeding annuals, such as coriander and parsley, or you can actually do a bit of both and have an experiment to see which one does better.
The first herb going in my propagator is mint. Mint is probably the most widely recognized herb for its flavor and has a wide range of uses in the culinary sense, from the famous mint jelly, which is always paired with roast lamb, to the more trendy salads incorporating a variety of different leaves. Historically, however, mint was known as a digestive aid and still is brewed as a tea for this purpose today. Mint can seem fussy to germinate, but remember that mint does require light to break dormancy. Keep the seeds pressed into the surface of moist soil and give it a couple of weeks to get started. Mint is well known for taking over your garden once it is established, so if you're not growing it in a pot, you can limit the spread by creating root barriers in the soil. Next up is another hardy perennial, and that is oregano. Oregano again germinates well when it's surface sown on moist soil and kept warm on a sunny windowsill. In a similar way to mint, oregano will also spread to fill the space it is given, so another one to keep your eye on if you're planting it in an open bed. Oregano is of course a culinary favorite for Italian dishes, appearing in pizza and pasta dishes alike, and often in vinaigrettes and marinades and many olive oil based dishes. Now, parsley is one of those herbs that I mentioned that can seem like a perennial because it is very good at reseeding itself. So if it's in a good position, chances are you're only going to have to plant parsley once, and then year after year you will enjoy a continued supply of volunteers. When starting from seed, however, it's usually most successful when it's direct sown, either in fall or in very early spring, and this is because parsley needs cold stratification to break its dormancy. If you are going to start indoors, then you can place your seeds in the fridge for several weeks before planting them, and what this does is it simulates a winter spell for the seeds to help them germinate. When introducing parsley to a new garden bed, I usually start some seeds indoors and also direct sow some outdoors.
Growing up in England, I spent a lot of time in traditional walled gardens that had huge beds full of different herbs in varying shapes and sizes that were used functionally, but also to create beauty and interest around garden borders. there is one huge botanical garden dedicated to growing herbs, and this is the Chelsea Physic Garden in London, England. It was established in 1673 by the apothecaries and today boasts a unique living collection of around 5,000 edible, useful medicinal plants. I think most of us could probably name about 10 of them, so it gives you some idea of how much knowledge has actually been lost.
Thyme is another really great hardy perennial to have in your herb garden, and also has a hallmark flavour used in many different Mediterranean dishes, soups and stews. It's a low-growing woody herb, so remember to plant it closer to the front of your bed so that it's easy to reach. German chamomile is actually an annual as opposed to Roman chamomile, which is a perennial. However, it is also great at reseeding, so you probably won't notice the difference. Visually, chamomile is recognized for its clusters of small daisy-like flowers, which can be picked and dried and used to make chamomile tea. Dill is a herb with a distinctive aniseed flavour similar to that of fennel. It's widely used in pickles and many fish recipes. You'll want to plant dill either in the back of your border or at the centre of a round bed, since it can grow up to 4 foot tall. Dill is a warm season herb and it's very sensitive to light freezes and frosts. It's not technically a perennial plant because a single plant will only live 2 years, and so it fits into a category of what is known as a biennial. It's quite proficient at self-seeding, however, so if it's left to grow naturally, a single dill plant should keep coming back year after year with volunteer plants.
Herbs have been used throughout history for so many reasons. They can transform a meal, you can make oils from them or brew teas out of them. We all know that they're brilliant for attracting pollinators to the garden, and of course they're known for curing ailments. Now these days, obviously, most people when they feel unwell go to the pharmacy to find a cure. But time ago, people would go to their garden because, well, they literally had to.
Chives are one of my favourites in the herb garden. Here I'm planting common chives that you see with the pinkish purplish flower on them, and I'm also going to be planting garlic chives in the cell next to these. I find chives so versatile in soups and salads and marinades. I love the mild onion flavour, and since they are a hardy perennial, it's a no question when it comes to having them as part of your herb garden. They like to stay moist in order to germinate, so the humidity inside a propagator is ideal for getting them started. Sage is another hardy perennial that once established is really quite low maintenance. It has a strong flavour and is typically used with many meats and stuffings. It's also touted as a highly nutritious herb and has a number of medicinal uses to it. There are a number of different varieties of sage, and in fact purple sage is also used as a natural dye for fabrics and historically was used to darken hair, so it's another great one to have in an established herb garden. Lastly, I'm starting a few varieties of basil, which comes in many different flavours now, from sweet to tangy to spicy. Basil is used in many tomato-based dishes, and although it's an annual, it's extremely easy to propagate one plant from another just by putting a cutting in a glass of water. You can also grow it well in a separate pot and it will quite happily overwinter on your kitchen windowsill.
Something that I found super interesting was in the time of medieval Europe, many of the plants that we today regard as weeds, think of nettles and dandelions and plantain, were all valued then as highly nutritious, and they were regularly used to add flavour in tasteless and stodgy stews. And one of those was called pottage. Now, if you're thinking that that word pottage sounds familiar, well, that is because it's where we get the idea for gardens known today as pottage gardens. Back then, a potager garden was a garden that literally provided vegetables for the pot. And today it's become a bit of a trending word to describe the idea of a kitchen garden that's planted both for function and for a bit of fancy. The great thing about starting your own herb garden is that herbs are so accommodating. They are happy in the garden, or they're happy being planted in containers, and even in unusual containers like wheelbarrows or old sinks. There's some really cool things that you can do with them. As long as they have drainage, they will be happy in whatever container you plant them in. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you and inspired you to start your own herb garden. Leave me a comment in the description below, and I'll see you in the next one.